Hello there, lads and ladies. Welcome back to another tattoo story time. It's been way too long, and today we are talking of my kaiju tattoo of good old Mosura, or as I like to call her, Mothra. So, my love of kaijus. I like to say it all started when my dad introduced me to a very quirky, very cheesy film called Son of Godzilla, where, yes, the most horrific piece of puppeteering was probably something to be like laughed at, but well, especially when it came to Manila or Minya. I believe I'd like to call him Minya. Whether you love him or hate him, he was probably one of the first kaiju that I ever saw. And then I kind of like broadened my horizons from that film because I thought to myself, this looks interesting, because I always loved animals, and then when I like saw the Kumongo, who I believe was the spider to the praying mantises on the island, I thought to myself, are there other monster films like that? I saw this film when I was like 6 or 7 or something like that, and then when I finally got into the whole Godzilla franchise, I went from Son of Godzilla to Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. So basically, I kind of grew up watching the Showa era of Godzilla, and I kind of fell in love with that, like the whole idea of a man in a suit. And to hear that the chap who passed away a few years back was quite upsetting, really, because um, he was like hailed as like a hero in Japan, basically, because he kind of gave like the life of Godzilla to kids all around the world, basically. Because the way he started out, the way Godzilla started out was back in 1954. He was meant to be a symbol of humanity's like destruction when it came to radiation and bombs and so on and so forth. That was like it was also like in some films like oh, what was it? It's a very long name. I can't really remember the name of it very well. Godzilla All Out Attack or something like that, where they kind of switch roles, basically, like how Godzilla and Ghidorah switch roles, and Mothra is still the protector of the Earth of that time. Ghidorah was basically a 1,000-year-old dragon, and probably one of the weakest versions of Ghidorah that we've ever seen. I mean, you kind of need to weaken him down to kind of feel like less of a threat towards Godzilla, who I think in that film was meant to be a representation of all of the souls that died in the Second World War, either on Japanese soil or Americans who lost their lives within the conflict of Japan itself, and many other souls, basically. And they kind of like formed within the bones of Godzilla to basically be like this amalgamation of souls, which is why his eyes are completely white. It was meant to be like soulless in a look, but technically they were souls within a body of Godzilla, basically. It's very confusing. But I think that was the first film where they actually finally started to move a little bit more into the CGI aspects of things. I mean, some of it was good, like when Mothra was flying, like from the very far view shots, they kind of like darkened the night to kind of hide how Mothra like flew. That was a good idea, because when they did close-ups on Godzilla like swimming under the water, yeah, some of the CGI was not very good. It's not up to certain standards, basically, when it comes to CGI. Normally, I prefer CGI depending on how the characters look, mostly. And I'm not really one for human actors, but in All Out Attack, where we first see Baragon, well, not really, we didn't really see Baragon for the first time within that universe, because I think Baragon, was in a film called Baragon versus the Gargantuans or something like that. Have not watched that. Do need to watch it. It looks pretty good. And I think in the games they try to make Baragon seem like this very acrobatic type of creature that could probably take on anything because of how versatile his combative skills are. But in All Out Attack, I think he just bites and jumps around. He doesn't like do any acrobatic flips. I don't know where they got this idea of him being an acrobatic fighter from, but I kind of preferred that. I think it would have been more interesting if like we actually had some high flying wire fu techniques from Baragon just to make things interesting, really, just to add a little bit more cheese to it. But yeah, with Mothra, after I watched every single Showa film, I then moved on to Mothra. I first started with the 1961 film Mothra, where she basically is trying to find her egg because the way Mothra represents herself, she's basically a reincarnation force, but also she is Earth's protector. So, in a certain sense, she retains memories from her previous lives or up to her deaths, basically. So, every time she dies, the new lava that comes out of the egg is basically retaining the memories of the previous Mothra and everything beforehand. So, in a way, it's making her immortal. So, she's one of the only kaiju of Earth's defenders that is basically unkillable. Unlike poor Anguirus, in which we found out that in the recent legendary film of Godzilla King of the Monsters, Anguirus unfortunately passed away, which was a shame. Hopefully that's not the end of him. Maybe Legendary could probably make up a prequel film to how Anguirus unfortunately lost his life. Because honestly, as most of the other kaiju lovers out there would like to see, is how he unfortunately met his end. There are some theories to say that Godzilla possibly crossed paths with him, because I believe in Legendary's version he's a bit more of a beast type creature. I mean, he's intelligent, and he also has a symbiotic relationship with Mothra. But then, why would he sleep next to Anguirus' skull and skeleton if he had quarrels with him? It just doesn't make sense. Like, why? Unless he was like, his hand was forced. Kind of like what happened with Rodan, basically. How Rodan basically turned on Godzilla in the King of the Monsters legendary version, whilst Mothra was fighting with him. And I always wondered that, like, why didn't Godzilla like kill Rodan after like turning on him? Like, you feel like that would be like one of the ultimate betrayals, basically. But he just like thinks, oh, okay, well, you submitted to me now, so it's fine. You could do it again, but I'm going to kill you if you don't submit to me. So it's kind of weird how animalistic he is, but then he has the tendency to be emotional and like forgiving in certain sections. I don't know. Maybe that's the Mothra in him because of her sacrifice for him in Legendary. Maybe that was a piece of her that remained to try and help him see sense. Because I think that's what Mothra is really to Godzilla in a certain sense. Mothra is the embodiment of forethought and emotional need that Godzilla needs, basically, whilst she uses Godzilla as a form of force that is meant to keep the world in balance, basically. So in a way, those two basically help each other out. It's for the better, really. So I then moved on to other kaiju films like Mothra's Rebirth. Yes, it's more geared towards children, basically, with the way there's an awful lot of Kennys in it. Kennys is basically a name that most of us kaiju fans normally give the little kids that are a little bit annoying in those films, But yeah, ever since Mothra's Rebirth, there hasn't been that many standalone films with her yet. I think the most recent cameo was obviously the 2019 King of the Monsters film. But she had basically had a standalone film in 1961, but she also kind of held up her own in like the universe of Godzilla, basically. Like, if most people know Mothra, it would be from the Godzilla universe. Kind of like how people tend to forget that Rodan was in a film of his own. Like, it first came Godzilla, then came Rodan, then came King Ghidorah, and then came Mothra. Although I believe the Astro Monster or Monster Zero was, I think, the third film in the series, just right after Godzilla raids again. So it's believed that King Ghidorah was roughly the same time as Mothra, although Mothra first appeared on the screens in 1961, and then in 1964 when Godzilla faced Mothra. And then after that, that's when Mothra tried to team up with Godzilla and Rodan to beat Ghidorah. And then in the film after that, like, the funding was a little bit low, so they kind of had to cut Mothra, which was kind of a shame, really, because I think it would have been gorgeous to see like Mothra fight King Ghidorah at his best and her at a somewhat better version of herself. And that's kind of where we go into like later versions of anime, like Planet Eater, basically, because we only see like 4 seconds or so of Mothra, and it's kind of a shame, really, because when you look at her, she looks similar to a glasswing butterfly, but she's a little bit bigger. What I mean by little bit, I mean extremely bigger. She's probably, let's say, Staten Island big by body, but wingspan probably as big as New York itself, basically. So we're talking massive. And that's where it kind of brings back into the section where she metamorphosizes herself in, well, I should say his self. I believe that was a male in that one, Mothra Leo, I believe. Because he went back in time to defeat the younger version of King Ghidorah. And he defeats it by dropping it into a volcano. And then he metamorphosizes himself for the next 65 million years for the help from other little small Mothra type beings from the Cretaceous period, basically. Well, it's either Jurassic or Cretaceous, so if it's if it's Jurassic, then it's like 105,000 years or something like that. But the interesting thing with that is that when she when he comes out of the metamorphosis, he then has armor, so he's basically a very evolutionized form of Mothra. So I like to imagine, like, why not just do that for a gestation period? Because I thought that with King of the Monsters, when she was kind of forced into becoming the moth much quicker, because that's why the two fairy twins, the two Mothra twins, basically are there to wake her up with the Mothra song, basically, in case they need her for protection of the Earth, basically. But then I think to myself, why not just let the Earth, like, deal with itself, and why not let the other kaiju deal with it until Mothra is ready to be strong enough to take on a threat? Because as we've seen in Mothra Rebirth, if Mothra Leo, who was a very significantly smaller version of Mothra, was able to take on King Ghidorah at full force and cut his wing off and then just headbutt him into, like, extermination and blow him up, why not just allow that time so that way Mothra can become a better version of itself, basically? Because I think in Rebirth of Mothra, there's only one death of Mothra, and that was the original, to make room for Leo to come through. And I think through those films, they go through about 3 different transformations. There's an aqua version, there's a light speed version, and then there's the armored version. The light speed version, I think, is able to bypass time itself, so it's probably the fastest kaiju in existence because it's the only one to be able to do time travel willingly, physically. Kind of like how Superman, like, rewound time by going around the world multiple times to save Lewis, basically. So there's some similarities, really, between the Mothras, but I think Lightspeed Mothra or Aqua Mothra, I think, was very small compared to the others because it had to be small and compact to be able to pass through the fabrics of time or something like that. I don't know. But it's just interesting, really. But then what I don't get is that in the end of Mothra's rebirth, he just, like, the armor dissipates and then he's Floofy Mothra again. And I'm like, what? So you just, like, bypassed the whole, like, 105,000 years of evolution just to be Floofy again? Like, I don't get it. Yeah, like, you're cute and all, but my god, you were like an awesome armored version of yourself. Why on earth would you give that up? It's just weird why they do that. It's just strange, really. And it's funny as well because an awful lot of female fans love Mothra, and they can latch on to Mothra because, you know, she's a female and she's very very protective, very emotional, as most kaiju are not really. Like, Mothra is the only kaiju, I think, that has true intentions for Earth, and is probably the only deity kaiju which has the possibility of dying and coming back again whilst retaining the memories, really. Which was the interesting thing, really, when it came to her lava form, basically, which was why she was attacking the humans in 2019's King of the Monsters, basically, because obviously she was trapped, she was scared. The only way she could to protect herself was to lay another egg of herself, but she couldn't do that because she was trapped with these humans. But then again, you know, she would attack if, like, one of the guards, like, shot an electric shot at her, which was interesting, really. Like, why you would do that, I have no idea. Why would you endanger the lives of your staff by, like, just threatening something that's not threatening you, basically? And I'll talk about like the alpha core with the inner dissections of the device with I can't remember the name of the device. I'll have to read it up, but yeah, it's basically a small little device that basically can control. Well, it doesn't control. It like either calms or like angers kaiju. Basically, I have to research that up, and because I cannot remember what they called the freaking thing. I think it was the alpha device or something like that, or maybe Apex. I'm not so sure, but yes, it started out with Mothra basically just opening my eyes to the whole world of kaiju, basically, really. How cheesy can be fun, you know, how really difficult it was to make diorama sets look like normal cities and men in leather suits. My god, the men in the suits, like they were set on fire, they had little explosions going on around them. It was dangerous. It was such a surprise how dangerous it was. And I think in the original the suit had to be expanded because it was just so tight and so heavy that it was hard for the person inside to basically move in it, and it was very hot, so most of the guys in those suits would normally pass out. It was a surprise how they were able to do most of the stunts half the time. But again, without it, you wouldn't have been able to get the slow, stumbling effect what Godzilla basically brought to the screens, basically. I think one of the directors basically said that, well, maybe he could be a little bit more mobile. But then someone said, well, no, then that takes away from the whole monster thing, really, because monsters are meant to be sort of slow. They're not meant to be, like, jumping about all over the place. Which then basically negates my idea for Baragon, basically, like him being an acrobatic gymnast, basically. But it just adds a little bit of spice because Baragon is a lot smaller, so he's able to do that. Kind of like how Mothra is able to pass through time because she was not a lot smaller. She had a different form, basically. It's a shame they don't actually do more standalone films because I feel like the modern versions of them in Legendary's versions should have their own standalone films now. Because I feel like Mothra's would be very interesting, like to follow the story of Ling and Cheng, like the twin sisters who are the Mothra twins, basically. But it's not really shown. I mean, it's shown because you know she has like a mother and a grandmother and two nieces, I think, who are the same, basically. Well, they might be their daughters. I'm not so sure. But the interesting thing with it is that it is alluded to them being the Mothra twins without them actually saying it, basically. So it's kind of more like a cameo, basically, type deal. You know, it was like an Easter egg type deal, like what they did with the oxygen bomb, basically, with Godzilla. They kind of brought that back. So there's a possibility for Destroyer to come in the Legendary versions. But to have a standalone film for Rodan, Mothra, or even Ghidorah, I'd even like a standalone film for Anguirus because I think that would be fantastic to find out really what happened to him. You know, like a little bit of a backstory to what happened to him, what made him die, basically. But you know, there's always the possibility for more. I think we're going to get mostly Kong stuff. We're going to get like Skull Island, a Netflix adaptation. And I think there is a series, and there's a possible talk of Singular Point being brought around again. I don't know about Singular Point, that anime was kind of but then so was Planet Eater. I feel like they focused too much on the human aspects. The human aspect story was good, but we watch kaiju films for kaijus, not the humans, really. No matter how good of an actor you are, you know, we want to see kaijus punching each other and beating the crap out of each other, you know. So that's how it's always been, really. So I think when it came to the Heisei series, I kind of didn't watch much of the Heisei. So the only Heisei series I did watch was I think Mothra and Batra versus Godzilla. Although I believe it's Mothra versus Batra. They end up teaming up to beat Godzilla in the end there. I saw an awful lot of Monsters All Out Attack. I saw the one with Kiryu. I saw most of them, really, but I think the only one I didn't watch was Biollante. But I do remember the story because I did see reviews of it, and it's fantastic. Like, it didn't get a theatrical release, I think, in America for the longest time, which was kind of a surprise, really, because in Japan it did pretty well. It didn't sell for much, especially for the huge budget they did for it. And it was probably the most original story due to the fact that it kind of took the DNA from Godzilla and added it into a plant whilst having the soul of I think Dr. Mifumi's daughter inside of the plant of that made the basic genetics of Biollante. If you don't remember, Dr. Mifumi was the doctor who created the oxygen bomb. I think he created the oxygen bomb, or it was the military, I'm not so sure. But he was responsible for the first death of the first Godzilla in the 1954 version. So it's nice that they stay loyal to the actors and actresses that come back to the Godzilla franchise from time to time. Kind of like what they're doing with Legendary with Serizawa, and what they did with Godzilla vs. Kong with Serizawa's son, which I'm really upset with how they kind of just... I don't know, I think he's dead. They kind of killed him off by having that electrical fuse from Ghidorah's brains going into the skull of Ghidorah, basically frying Serizawa's head, basically, clean. So it's kind of upsetting, really, that he didn't get much of a character arc, really. He was just there, basically, to act as the villain and then to just be killed off. It was kind of strange, really. I don't know why they would just kill off a very well-known character's son like that, even though he's a villain. But I still feel like he needed more character development in a certain sense. But yeah, that's for another day, especially when I do the review for the light novel book. But yeah, I just wanted to come on today, tell my little tattoo story of my love for kaijus, for Mothra, and the thing that started out my own little community on the PSN. It's called Kings and Queens of Kaiju. You can go and check. It's still there, most likely. Haven't had a chance to go on there for the longest time, really, because I'm just trying to take a break from PSN for a while, due to the fact that it's just... I don't know. I feel like I need to take a break from gaming from time to time, because it's just, it's fun to have a game or two with friends and all that, but it can be quite taxing on your time, especially when you have friends and family that you should spend your time with, basically. Well, I do miss my friends from overseas and all that. An awful lot of them I do miss, so I'll have to probably get back into that when I move or something. I'll be planning on moving sometime, either next year or the year after, really. It depends, really. We're just trying to find a nice place, really. But for now, I thank you all ever so much for watching another Tattoo Storytime. Hopefully next week I will try and finish off the Konohana Kitan series. I know I've got up to about 6 books, I believe, so I just need to do another 3. I still have not got volume 10. I'm still trying to look for that, unfortunately. I've got the 5th volume of Kaiju Girl Caramelized, so I'll definitely do a review of that when I get the chance. And I will try to do a rugby book review. I'm trying to do one of the autobiographies. I might do Elwyn Jones, because Elwyn Jones is probably like one of the most influential captains in Welsh rugby history. And I might talk about Gatlin as well when I get the chance, because he was probably one of the first coaches to ever get a Grand Slam 3 times in a row. And I believe he did 2 of them, I think, with Wales, and 1, I think, with New Zealand. No, sorry, not New Zealand. That's not Six Nations. I believe it might be Ireland. I'm not so sure. I'll have to do a little recheck on that. But yeah, thank you all ever so much for watching. I hope you've all enjoyed my little ramble for cheesy loves of kaiju and all that stuff. It's just something that I really grew up with and I really enjoyed, really. And like, especially when it came to like Godzilla vs. Gigan, that was like the weirdest one, I think. How like they always go with the alien standpoint, and then I hear like with the legendary versions, they're like, oh, we don't have enough aliens, and I'm like, dude, no, aliens ruin everything. Like, especially with the Astro Monster, how the like humans pretended to be how the aliens pretended to be on their side, but they're actually evil. Well, of course they're evil. They're aliens. They might have bad intentions. You never know, really. Well, that kind of sounds a bit xenophobic, but that's the point. There's xenos for a reason. They're aliens. But with Godzilla vs. Gigan, especially when they started talking to each other, that was weird. But they couldn't even like keep the famous Godzilla roar from fucking up at the end. Like when he was talking to Anguirus and then he started like roaring, like you could hear the scratching of the tape. It was like, no, what are you doing? That's wrong. That's awful. Oh my god, I didn't even talk about this scene. There's this film called Godzilla vs. Megalon, which isn't even meant to be about Godzilla. They brought Godzilla in for more marquee value. It was meant to be like a design choice. Like a child picked a design for a Ultraman style robot called Jet Jaguar, and it was good for the kid to see his own design come to life in the film. But no one was going to go see a random film about a random new monster without some sort of marquee value, so they added Godzilla in. And there was like this one poster of them standing on top of a trade center in New York, and I'm like, what? They never in New York. What? Why were they even doing? Sometimes the sometimes the people with the posters really made the most misleading thing with these films. It was very surprising. But the most surprising thing in it, I think, was when Godzilla decided to just do one of the wackiest things in this film. He fights like a boxer, and then later on, he's held by like Megalon's held by Jet Jaguar. Godzilla like flies across the freaking like grounds on his tail, drop kicking like a plank, hitting Megalon, goes back, does another one, goes along, planks along the way towards him, and then drop kicks him again whilst gliding on his tail. It can't be weirder than what happened in Godzilla vs. Hedorah, because he starts to fly, and I think also in one of the DVD titles, there's like one of the chapters in that is called Something You Don't See Every Day. Yeah, it's definitely something you don't see every day. A freaking flying iguana through the air trying to go after a piece of shit version of a kaiju. That's a weird film as well. It's about like drugs and pollution and environmental like health and stuff like that. But I never thought I'd watch a film of two giant monsters and one of them basically looking like something that came out of the rear end of a rhino. So yeah, some of them were great. Like Final Wars Godzilla, way overpowered. Like he was just so overpowered, and he was one of the smallest Godzillas there was, which was very surprising. We also got to see a scene of him beating the crap out of Zilla, like the 1998 version of Zilla. Always brings a smile on my face. Not the animated version. The animated version was much better than the 1998 film. I think that went on for like 2 years, from 1998 to 2000, I think. It was a good animated series, I won't lie. That Zilla was good, because he actually had personality, he got on with the humans, he had the intelligence of a dog, and he was roughly the same size as Showa Godzilla, about 150 something odd meters, so he was respectable in the height of Godzilla itself. And yeah, it was a good series all around, really. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Definitely better than the 1998 version, when they tried to class it off as Godzilla. No, you're not there yet, mate. I'm sorry. Maybe in future versions, when you get a little bit more following, I think you'll probably fall more into the realm of Godzilla. But animated version of Zilla, yeah, you've definitely earned the spot within the realm of Godzilla. Not as one of the best, but you're definitely one of them. So yeah, I'm sorry I'm rambling a little bit too much. I just love kaiju films. I love like Godzilla within the realm of being cheesy, but also being Earth's defender, but also being a sign of like the hard effects of use of radiation and pollution, and you know how war can just bring misery to people. Basically, that's what he was meant to be originally. He was meant to be like a symbolism of destruction and death, basically. Which I think they kind of do well in the legendary versions, whilst keeping him sort of neutral in between being Earth's defender but also being destructive. He kind of has to be destructive to get the job done from time to time. But yeah, that's just the interesting thing about it, really. So, with that, thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and yeah, I'll see you guys next week for another book review. Hopefully it will be Konohana-ki-tan or Kaiju Girl Caramelized. So, with that, lads and ladies, thank you ever so much. Take care, my friends.